Hey everybody, in this next video lesson, we're going to talk about solubility and how solubility is affected by intermolecular forces. Now, first of all, we need to ask ourselves the question, what is solubility? Now, solubility is the ability to dissolve one substance into another. And so what we're trying to do is create some mixtures, some homogeneous mixtures. Now, when it comes to being soluble, the intermolecular forces matters. This is why some things will dissolve into other things and then some things will not dissolve into other things. Let's first start with the polar/ionic substances. Substances that have dipole-dipole interactions will dissolve into other things with dipole-dipole interactions. Likewise, if it's got hydrogen bonds, it will dissolve into other things with hydrogen bonds. Things with hydrogen bonds can dissolve into things that are dipole-dipole. Things with ion dipole will also dissolve into things that are dipole-dipole. So in other words, there needs to be some sort of polarity of the molecule in order for it to dissolve into another molecule that is polar. On the other hand, nonpolar substances will only dissolve into other nonpolar substances. These things will exhibit only London dispersion forces and will not be able to mix or dissolve into things with dipole-dipole, hydrogen bond, or ion dipole type of interactions. So in other words, if it's nonpolar, it will only mix with other nonpolar, whereas if the molecule is polar, then it will be able to dissolve into other polar substances, or if it's ionic, it will also be able to dissolve into other polar substances. This is where we get the term like dissolves like, meaning polar will dissolve polar, nonpolar will dissolve nonpolar, but the two mixed together will not happen. Now down here we've got a couple of examples. This is gasoline. This is an example of a nonpolar substance, and this would be mixing with other nonpolar substances, but not with other polar substances. Salt is an ionic substance, and when put into water will dissolve because water is polar and salt is ionic. So you get an ion-dipole interaction. And down here we've got a different selection of alcoholic beverages. Alcohol is ethanol, and ethanol is mixed with water in each one of these cases. And so these are all mixtures where ethanol is soluble in water because ethanol has hydrogen bonds and water has hydrogen bonds, and so like dissolves like. Now let's take a closer look about how and why this happens. Now water, as you can see, it's got its positive side and its negative side. And ethanol is polar. And not only is it polar, but it's got hydrogen bonding. And it's got this oxygen with this hydrogen, which creates this polar molecule. And if you mix polar molecule with polar molecule, you get polar molecules interacting with other polar molecules. You get the polar molecule of ethanol and the polar molecule of water, which are able to attract each other. Because remember, each one of these little water molecules has a positive side and a negative side, and the positive side of the water is attracted to the negative side of the ethanol. Whereas each of these ethanol molecules also has a positive side and negative side, and the positive side of the ethanol molecule is attracted to the negative side of the water. And so you've got uniform attraction between the different dipole of the different molecules. This is why they can form a solution, or that is why water and ethanol are soluble into each other. Now let's look at another example where we've got water, which is a polar molecule. As you can see, it's got the positive sides down here by the hydrogens and the negative up here by the oxygen. This is another look at the same molecule. It exhibits strong hydrogen bonding with other water molecules. Now, cyclohexane, on the other hand, is just a big ring of carbons with hydrogens coming off it. There are no pairs of electrons. There is no polarity of this molecule. This is a very nonpolar molecule. It exhibits just weak dispersion forces. Now, when you mix, and I'm sorry about the words kind of getting in the way here, but I'll try and work around it. When you mix these two together, now for a moment you might get some cyclohexane, which are these big black ones, and then the water, which are these small red and blue ones, and they will mix together. But what happens is the water will start to find other water molecules because the water is polar and it's not attracted to the nonpolar molecules. It'll be attracted to the other water molecules of which it's polar. So the polars attract the polars, and what happens is they kind of like work their way around the nonpolar molecules, kind of push them out of the way and find each other. So the polars start to clump up and attract each other, and really the nonpolars have to hang out because they're not attracted to the polar molecules, and so they just kind of find each other and become seemingly one layer of liquid. Now, slowly the nonpolar molecules clump together, the water molecules clump together, and slowly, these two layers begin to form. water mixing all with other waters, and the nonpolar up on top mixing with all the other nonpolars. And these two will separate one another because they are opposite in terms of their intermolecular forces. This one's a nonpolar, or London dispersion only, where this one has dispersion, hydrogen bonding, and those are attracted to each other and essentially squeeze out the nonpolar molecules so that they are now separated into two different layers. Well, that takes care of this video lesson on how intermolecular forces affect solubility. Thanks for watching.